handouts of that. Including the overhead.
Go ahead and let him know about the
Good evening. I'm David Webster from the Environmental Protection Agency, Region 1 office in Boston. And welcome and thank you very much for coming out. Thank you also for the folks in the library for being here for offering this great facility tonight. Can everybody hear in the back? We have a pretty good system here. Bathrooms are here to the right. Welcome. We have a series of 2 events actually tonight. The first is a public meeting, which is a little less formal, and then the hearing that will follow. The meeting is starting now. Trying to wrap up around 7. We have a 15-minute break, but we'll see how that goes. During that time, George Papadopoulos, the permit writer, will be going through some overheads, and you have copies in the handout, which I think is hopefully informative. And there's a lot of complex things going on, both process-wise and government-use, as well as what we're trying to do with this permit. The permit regulates the discharge of pollutants from the Entergy's Pilgrim nuclear power station, as well as the intake of local water. So after that period, and we will take a short break at 7:15. There will be a public hearing, which is a little bit more formal. Myself and David Ferris from the state Department of Environmental Protection make opening statements. There will be a stenographer recording it. And everyone will have an opportunity to make a statement for the record. As I'll say in the introduction to that one, too, those over the other public comments are receiving for consideration in taking this draft permit without public comment to find George will talk more about that in a minute. We'd like to recognize for your benefit the people that are here from the Environmental Protection Agency, the federal government in Boston, as well as the state government. So there's informal parts, and you're feeling like maybe you're not getting a question answered or something, you can approach it with one of us. Again, I'm David Webster. I'm Chief of the Water Permits Branch at Region 1 EPA. From the state is David Ferris and Susie King. Also from EPA is George Papadopoulos, Danielle Gato in the front row. Olga Valera met you at the door, and David Houlihan is here. Where? Oh, okay. Did I get everybody from the state EPA? I think so. Okay, so we'll turn it over. We have a lot to cover in the meeting part. It goes through, you can put through the overhead to see. So I think we'll try to get to your questions. If you have a burning clarification question, you can do it. And then we will take questions at the end and try to get everybody to see what's in the permit, what's being regulated. Thanks. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm George Papadopoulos. I'm permit writer at EPA Region 1 in Boston. As Dave mentioned, this is the informal portion of the proceedings tonight. And I'll be talking a little bit about the NIMBYs program, some background on the facility itself, and kind of go into some detail on permit limits and conditions that we set in this draft permit. And like Dave said, we'll have some time after the presentation for some questions and answers. So a little background on the facility here. The facility was built back in '72. It was owned and operated by Boston Medicine, a single unit floating water reactor. And 1999, we Energy bought the facility and has been operating since that time. It's a base load nuclear plant, which means that it runs more or less 100% power most of the time. Faster factors than about 99%. The only time that it's not running quickly is when we have every year and a half, so the refueling outage the last several weeks. There's an occasional unplanned shutdown. The majority of the time, the plant's up and running 100% of the time. There's a cooling water intake structure operated by the facility that draws about 467 million gallons per day. Cape Cod Maine is
operations, electricity generation as of June 2019. A little background on the MP's program. It's a federal Clean Water Act program. It regulates point source discharges of pollutants into the waters of the United States. Discharges include processed wastewater, cooling water, stormwater, contaminated groundwater, and those types of discharges. Here in EP Region 1 covers the 6 New England states. Most of the states across the country, the NPDES program has been delegated, where the states issue permits. In most of the states, but in Massachusetts, EPA still writes and issues the permits, although they're co-issued with the Mass DEP. Quick background on the permitting process works. Permits typically run for 5 years, and at least 6 months ahead of the permit expiration date. The reapplication is due. And occasionally, after the application is received, there's occasional time to need to request additional information. Do that through Section 308 authority letter, information request letter. Once we have all the information we need, kind of put together a draft permit fact sheet, kind of explaining all the permit conditions, all the rationales, all the legal basis for all the conditions of the permit. And once it's ready to be drafted, we put it out on at least 30-day public notice period. In this case, we extended it by another 30 days or so. And occasionally, if hearings requested, we typically hold a hearing. We are in this case. We collect all the comments, and also during the hearing, we take additional testimony and comments and collect all those. We address all those comments and make any necessary change to the permit. At that point, we're ready to issue a final permit. 30 days after the issuance date, up to 30 days after the issuance date, any party or the permittee any party that's commented on the permit, so the permittee has an opportunity to appeal certain conditions of the permit. And that will set in motion an appeal process. If there's no appeal, then the permit will go into effect roughly 30 days after that. Here on a timeline for this particular permit. The last permit was issued in 1991. The modification issued a year later to address the 2 issues that came up. The application was submitted in 1995. And since that time, we requested additional information for the cooling water intake structure and also for the thermal issues that we'll be talking about later. Also during that time, 2014, the new cooling water intake structure phase 316 regulations have been revised, and Entergy announced the closure of the facility in 2019. A lot of people have wondered why the permit's taking so long to draft and issue up. For a lot of reasons. It's one of the more complex permits in the region. We also have a backlog of other power plant permits that are difficult to write. Not too many permit writers to write them. There's also the issue of the thermal variance that's requested, and also the cooling water intake structure regulations. There's a lot of interest, professional public interest. And during this time, we also have to consult with the National Marine Fisheries Service, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, as well as the Mass DEP and Mass Office of Coastal Management. And since the announcement of the closure, that's kind of forced us to kind of have to look at pre- and post-shutdown operations and kind of craft a permit that limits both situations, which kind of made it a little more complicated. And that is later in the end. Quick view of the facility looking north and south. See the intake containment. little information on the intake structure. There's two main intake bays, and each one operates a series of trapping screens that keep debris out from coming in through the plant. The openings of the mesh in that screens are roughly 1/2 by 1/4 inch. Occasionally fish do get impinged on those screens, they get either fall off or get washed off, and get directed towards one of two fish sluiceways or returns. They take it out either to the discharge canal or back to the intake conveyance right about here. So that's the impingement.
Excuse me, it's very hard to hear you because you're not using the microphone. Could you please use it so that we can hear you?
Sure.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I mentioned the fish being trapped on the intake screens. That's the impingement portion of the impacts related to the cooling water intake structure. The other impact is the entrainment, where the fish eggs and larvae, they pass through the mesh openings, get taken into the plant, and discharged out. Just give you a sense of those impacts. We looked at the last 20 years of data. And the annual average impingement is about 44,000 fish. And the average entrainment is 2.8 billion eggs and 354 million larvae pulled into the plant. Here's just a diagram of some of the outfalls. The cooling process water outfalls. The two main cooling water outfalls are the outfalls 001 and 010. 001 is the main condenser cooling water, which makes up 90% of the flow. And 010 is the salt service water system, which is a variety of cooling water through the plant. And both of those discharge at this end of the outfall channel. There's also a couple of process water outfalls, 011 and 014. One of those discharges through a storm drain 005 to the channel. Another one is directed into the channel itself. Here we have the cooling water intake structure related outfalls. As I mentioned, there's two fish returns or sluiceways that take the impinged fish that are washed off the screens and directed back, either through the discharge channel at 002 back to the intake embayment at outfall 003. There's also a outfall 012. That's the thermal backwash. Roughly 8 to 10 times a year, the facility needs to take one of the two intake bays and run the heated water back through the screens and out to the intake embayment, kind of control biological growth. Specific limits set in place for those discharges as well. This shows the 4 stormwater outfalls from the facility. Outfalls 004 and 05 discharge to the discharge canal. And outfalls 6 and 7 discharge out to the intake embayments. I'll just give you a brief rundown of some of the new and revised permit limits in the draft. Outfall 01, which is the main condensing cooling water discharge. For the pre-shutdown condition, there's new water quality base limits for total residual oxidants, which essentially is the total residual chlorine. Post-shutdown, there'll be at least a 95% reduction in the cooling water flow. 17-degree reduction in the maximum effluent temperature, and about a 29-degree reduction in the delta temperature, which is the difference between the intake temperature and the effluent temperature. For outfall 010, which is the service water, mainly cooling water discharge. For pre-shutdown, there's new oil and grease, total suspended solids limits. And post-shutdown, there's more stringent limits for flow and total residual oxidants, as well as a 30-degree reduction in the maximum effluent temperature. I
mentioned the two process wastewater outfalls, 011 and 014. There's a new whole effluent toxicity testing requirement for those outfalls. For the stormwater outfalls, there's new oil and grease limits that are set at non-detect. There's also a new requirement for a stormwater pollution prevention plan, which, yes? Stormwater pollution prevention plan. All right. Stormwater pollution prevention plan is a new requirement. Its goal is to reduce discharge of pollutants through stormwater, the outfalls. And this plan also includes monitoring of stormwater that gets at the electrical vaults and needs to be discharged out periodically. And there's also new quarterly effluent sampling for discharge from 4 of the electrical vaults associated with outfalls 004, 005, and 007. I mentioned the thermal variance, the Clean Water Act 316A. That's a variance from temperature water quality standards. And that's allowed if the facility demonstrates that different temperature standards are required. They need to demonstrate that there's no thermal impacts to the balanced indigenous population on the receiving water. And the previous permit had granted a 316A variance, and this one has continued that variance based on EPA and DEP's review of the data that we received from the permittee. And those particular limits on the permit apply for the pre-shutdown conditions. For post-shutdown, there's more stringent conditions that I talked about earlier, which are more or less based on water quality standards for the receiving water. Okay, for the 316B, which is the cooling water intake structure regulations, EPA considered a range of technologies to kind of minimize the impingement and entrainment effects of the cooling water intake structure. And among those technologies, we selected 3 that were available. And those were closed cycle cooling, assisted recirculation, and variable speed drives. Now, I mentioned during development of this permit, the new 316B regulations were revised. And the shutdown also caused us to have to reevaluate all our conclusions. So for 316B, what EPA has to determine is the best technology available for each permit that has a cooling water intake structure. So in the end, how it came out was the VTA determination was an average monthly flow reduction from 467 million gallons per day down to 19 million gallons per day, which represents about a 96% reduction, which is essentially similar to closed cycle cooling. That's obviously post-shutdown. We did give consideration to variable frequency drives, like I mentioned, but that was, the benefits of that were limited since the facility is a base load plant that runs at full power most of the time, so you don't have the benefit of changing flows. You can reduce the pump speeds to pull less water in. And also, if you did reduce the flows, variable speed drive can also have higher temperatures, which could be, we have to consider the thermal variance again if that was an option. And for pre-shutdown, the interim BTA that we determined was feasible was continuous rotation of the traveling streams at the intake structure. And the benefit of that was to have the fish throw and pinch kind of come off the screens and improve their survivability when they're returned back to the receiving water. Okay, just a little rundown of where we're at. Following this will be the public hearing that Dave mentioned. Comments on the draft permit are due by next Monday, July 25th, unless they're extended at the end of the public hearing, a few additional days. During this time, we'll also complete our consultations with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the National Marine Fisheries Service. And we'll respond to all the public comments and finalize the permit. Make any changes as appropriate based on the comments we received. And EPA also needs to receive certification from MassDEP and also consistency review determination from Massachusetts Coastal Zone Management Office. And after that, permit will be signed by EPA and DEP and go into effect. I mentioned there's a 30-day period during which the permit can be appealed. If it's not appealed, it will go into effect roughly after 60 days after signature. Now, all the permit documents are at this website here, and also you can find it on the public hearing document that came out. These are the contacts. I'm the permit writer at EPA. Kathy Bakalopoulos, who couldn't be with us tonight, is the contact at the MassDEP for this permit. And you can submit written comments to me or by regular mail, by email, and they'll go into the record of the responded to. That's all I have to say at this point. Is there any specific questions? Yes. Yes.
More stringent water quality use requirements go into effect in June of 2019. Why not, I don't know, say tomorrow or at least maybe February of 2019? Is it just a coincidence that the reactor would be shut down at the end of May?
Do you mean for the temperature standards?
Sorry?
I mentioned specifically that the water quality standards for temperature post-shutdown would be based on water quality versus the thermal variance limits, which are currently in place and which will go on until the permit plant shut down.
So I'm wondering about the $500 billion of debt.
Right.
Why wait until June? Why not a few months earlier or 15 years ago?
So regarding the intake, what we did was looking at the best technology available for the cooling water intake. Several would be closed cycle cooling, which would cut back, about 95% of the flow. Assisted recirculation, which would have been putting in a cooling tower to cool it, the heated water, which would also cut down about 90% of the flow. And variable speed pumps. When we looked through that, one of the factors, was looking at the cost and benefits. Another one was the engineering feasibility. We thought they were available and could have been done. When we looked at the expected plant life, we estimated that it would take longer to put those cooling towers or other technologies in play than would extend beyond the anticipated shutdown time. So we found, based on the fact of the expected facility life, we did not choose that. Instead, on both the flow limit for the temperature and for the intake, we capped the time that they could use that higher flow that is essentially what they use now at that date or closure, whichever one comes first. So in the event they were shutting down in June 2019, the permit limit, which restricts them down to 96% of what they were, does go into effect. So I guess to answer your question, no, it's not a coincidence. It's because when we looked at it and looked at the projected plant life, The technologies that would reduce it down to the 95% level would not have been put in by the time of the shutdown.
So you didn't actually ask that question until they already announced they were shutting down?
Well, actually, we've worked for many years on that, and we're coming close to the fact sheet, looking at those ones very seriously. But they came with an announcement before we put out a draft permit.
You said that the time that it's taken to write out this permit is very complex. Does that not mean that it's very important? And you knew in 2012 that it was going to be licensed until 2032. So there again, this whole thing happening in June and extended to December of 2019 is really kind of fishy, to use the term.
It's absolutely an important permit, and one that we took very seriously, and it took a longer time than I would want. So I would encourage also, after this information meeting, that's what the public hearing is. But I don't, we wanted to get it right. It certainly wasn't for lack of diligence, but it did take longer than it should have to move. Yes.
I've heard that SG wants to put another inflow in when they close down the plant, so they get more water in to take care of the fact that they're going to have all this nuclear stuff there. Now, have you looked at that and what they want to do with that?
More intake lawyers.
They want another intake. Yeah, they want another intake. They more water in when they close down the plant. Now, has anybody talked about that?
It's not our understanding.
The permit does have pre and post conditions, and there is a water use that's in decommissioning, so that after the June 2019 date, they still allow some flow for the cooling during the decommissioning activities. But I haven't heard anything about the new intake.
My name is Elise Soley. I'm an attorney at Goodwin Proctor. I want to be clear that I'm not aware of any increased water use after shutdown. To the contrary, the post-shutdown water use is planned to be a minor fraction of what the current flows are. So, because I don't understand the basis for the comments, I don't think that they represent the reality of the plan's future.
So an important point is that we bifurcated the permit, so there are conditions, particularly on the intake, that last up till the shutdown, and then a different setting. If you look at the permit, there are 4 or 5 outfalls that change at that point, and then some, like stormwater outfalls, that remain the same from the time the permit's effective until it expires.
Yes, sir.
Just a question. Have there been any environmental studies done by EPA or by Energy for EPA during the recent years for this NPDES process that might indicate in the region of the intakes and outflow a variation of sensitive fish larva species or fish eggs on a seasonal basis that might show there could be a more sensitive time of year versus a less sensitive time of year, as opposed to everything being pretty uniform, not making a difference overall in that sense?
We'll ask Danielle Vito, who's a biologist working on this one, to go through the study.
Okay. So there are annual impingement and entrainment monitoring requirements for Pilgrim currently, and they sample at the intake, and also in the bay. So there's sort of ambient biological data as well as intake data, and there are definitely seasonal variations in eggs and larvae. Biologically, you would expect that. There are times of year where, especially sort of in the spring and the summer, where I think you saw the value that we have estimated is about 2.8 billion eggs and larvae a year. That's the big number, and most of those, upwards of 80% of those, are labored eggs, which are cunner and tautog, and those spawn in May, June, July. So that's when you see a huge, huge pulse. But it's a marine system, so there are eggs and larvae in year-round. But we do see a seasonal pulse. So there's actually, this is a unique situation in which we have upwards of 25 years of data of this plant, biological data.
Just a follow-on question. That number certainly seems to be a significant number shown on the screen, but in your professional opinion, how would that number compare to the total number expected in Cape Cod Bay, considering the flushing action on a daily basis?
That's an excellent question, and one that's difficult to answer. It's really, Pilgrim has not done those studies, nor does MassP or DMF. There's some data available. It's really hard to actually get a population level for Cape Cod Bay. What we generally do is, look at landings and things like that in the Gulf of Maine to determine population size. For those particular species, they're not of real commercial interest, so there's only little data available. The studies that they have done suggest that it's a fairly small percentage. Cunner and tautog are broadcast spawners. They spawn a ton, and they really like sort of riprap, so rocky areas, just like the jetties that Pilgrim built around their embayment. So they essentially built sort of excellent habitat and housing for cunner and tautog, only to intake them.
Last question. So as a regulator, how does EPA determine what would be a significant impact versus a non-significant impact given that number seen on the screen?
You are full of excellent questions tonight.
I did this for a living.
Significance is a difficult thing to say. The regulation 316B requires you to regulate the facility to require the best technology available to minimize the adverse environmental impact. And EPA considers any entrainment and impingement an adverse environmental impact. A lot of times we face questions that, the levels of entrainment and impingement, because it's not a population level issue, they're de minimis or they don't matter, and we don't agree. We definitely think that impingement and entrainment, and I think through all the rulemakings you can see, that has not changed. We consider impingement and entrainment an adverse environmental impact. But then it becomes a question of what is the technology available to minimize that impact and what we can do. And that's where we take sometimes a long time to wrestle with that question.
Can you identify yourself, please?
I'm sorry, my name is Danielle Gato. I'm a biologist in Region 1 at EPA.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Mike Jackson from Congressman Keating's office. I have a comment from Congress, which I'll submit and let us know at the appropriate time. But I did have some questions based on the presentations you just had, especially about the timing. The plant's been operating under an expired NPDES for 20 years, so you indicated that the EPA has been working on the NPDES draft for a significant amount of time. The closure was announced last October 14th. So I guess my question would be, how far along was that process at EPA as of October 13th? And how close were you to issuing a draft permit at that time?
Well, the people that have following it, some in the audience, know that I would optimistically predict, in the next 3 to 6 months, over and over again, unfortunately, because it always seemed close, but they're always very tough questions. I would say, when that came out, we were hoping within 6 months to have a draft permit out. We've done a lot of studies. George mentioned 308 letters. There were a series of them, at least 3 over the years, to the facility to get information from them. And we were down to looking at the question Danielle was getting at. And it was the relatively easy part of that is, yes, there is an adverse impact. The harder part is, okay, what do you do to minimize it, looking at the different factors? Including a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court that said EPA can look at cost and benefits. Okay, how do you look at benefits? You know, what's the value of the fish and the resource? And that's what we're grappling with and coming up with, looking at the technologies, the closed cycle cooling, the assisted recirculation, the reverse ones. There were several technologies we looked at that we found, no, they weren't feasible. And they included relocating the discharge, the intake to a different location. Just not enough information to show that that would have been a better situation. So in the fact sheet goes through the technologies limited, the ones that we're still on, and we were right at that point of looking at those three technologies, looking at the anticipated benefits as far as how much reduction in eggs and larvae you get for each one of them, and the expected cost to make a decision.
And just to follow up on the timing, you mentioned in the PowerPoint that, well, it's a 5-year term. And 5 years, assuming it's issued sometime within the next 3 to 6 months, 5 years will be after the shutdown. Will the operator be required to apply for renewal of that?
They'll still be discharged beyond that point. They would have to reapply at least 6 months prior to the expiration date.
And will they get 20 years after that before you come up with that permit?
I don't think so.
Well, what happens is, by law, they're administratively continued, so they are bound by the old permit until this one goes through, clears all appeals, and goes into effect. And the same thing be going. So if we are not unable to renew it in 5 years, it's administratively continued the existing permit. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, thank you.
So as to the consultation of the Endangered Species Act, you mentioned about that hit. Can you tell us what species you're still consulting about and when that's going to be done and how you could write a draft permit that determines that there's no take or negative impact without having completed the consultation?
Well, I think we, in the fact sheet, kind of spoke to the species we're concerned about. And during this time, we've been talking with the National Marine Fisheries Service, and we expect them to agree with our conclusions. But accurate.
How about with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on the birds?
Why don't you let Danielle get a little bit more detail about what we're doing with NIMS and the consultation, and then we can talk about Fish and Wildlife.
So the consultation is the process that we follow, is the process that we always follow. We initiate consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or the National Marine Fisheries Service. When the draft permit is issued, we make a preliminary determination of impacts, and then they either we initiate a formal consultation, which is a lengthier process, or an informal consultation, which is when we would determine that the permit would affect but not adversely affect endangered species, or if there's no endangered species present, then we would say there's no consultation necessary. In this case, the Pilgrim and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission had a consultation from 2012 that they completed under their relicensing, and we didn't feel that there was substantial changes, and any changes that there were from the permit were in favor of the species, which include Atlantic sturgeon, right whale critical habitat, humpback whale. So during the draft permit period, we were consulted with NIMS, and that's not unusual that it wouldn't be completed before the draft permit. Did I answer your question?
Any other questions? That being the case, we'll take a small break before the public hearing.
We'll recommence at 7:15. I meant to mention that the gentleman from cable TV that's filming the people up here anyway for cable TV.
One more question, yes.
Yeah, my question is, who would be responsible to pay the mitigation for 20 years of damages? Would it be entity or EPA?
Good question.
In what form, like a natural resource damage claim?
Yeah, well,
disaster.
obviously, you talked about the unlimited fishing permit, the damages that occurred because the best technology was not used. Now, is it an entity problem? Because what? They did what was required, which was not follow best technology. So it looks like the buck stops with you guys for not doing your job. So I'm just curious about this.
Well, we're going through the prescribed process and the regulations to follow them and open for comment now.
Well, that's my question.
Pardon?
That is my question.
Okay, and phrase it again during the hearing as well. We look at the science, the biology, and the law and what we're told to do, and do the best we can to know it, knowing that there's various opinions on both sides in most of the cases that we deal with, and go through a public process to help ensure that we get it right. So we do value your comments this evening and during the public comment period. So when we come back, the stenographer, and I'll give some opening remarks, and then invite, if you haven't yet and you want to, fill out a card. The card's important not only for the stenographer to get your name right, but also that's our record for letting you know when the final permit comes out. So I'd encourage you to do that. Thanks. See you in a little bit.